In this video, I want to discuss gaslighting a bit more. I've spoken about gaslighting a lot in the past, so you can watch my previous videos. I have over 3,000 videos on this channel. I don't expect to go through all of them. The videos I made in 2016 and 17 contain many summaries and reminders, so you can check one of those videos about gaslighting. What I want to remind you in this video, I want to highlight to you, in case you forgot about it, is that gaslighting isn't just a psychological trick that narcissists use, or people with personality disorders. Gaslighting is an ingredient that makes the world work. Without gaslighting, or when it's done collectively, without that, you don't have a world system. Let me explain. If you have a narcissist, let's take a narcissist, a male narcissist, in a marriage. Okay, that's a common thing that happens. When he treats the wife as trash. He says hurtful things and things that really don't add up. And then the wife asks him, why did you say that? And he says, I never said that, or you're imagining it, or even if I said that, you didn't take it well because you're too sensitive. So he's flipping the script right now. That's gaslighting. And if this happens too often to a target, you'll begin to disassociate. Your brain becomes confused and you won't be able to function properly. And that's the goal of gaslighting, to cause the target to malfunction so people can have an excuse in continuing the violence against the target. This is done collectively throughout the world and throughout history. For example, I want to give a brief historical example now. You had the elite that ruled France around 1200. And these families were spread throughout France and in England. Why? Because in 1066 it were people from France that invaded England and took over. So the family that ran France also ran England. But the one that sat on the throne of England also had access to the western parts of what today call France. It was an arrangement. One part of the family runs England and they have the shores of France to their disposal, and the rest of the family remains in France and they govern the east, the more rural and mountainous areas towards the Mediterranean. The population began to ask questions. What is this? They began to ask, why are those Englishmen why are they coming here and taking away many resources? So when the people began to ask questions, the ruling family pretended as if they were fighting one another. And that's how the 100 Years' Wars began. And 100 Years' Wars refers to a period of 130 years in which there were persistent conflicts, between England and France. But these conflicts were rituals, because behind the scenes it was one big family which kept marrying with one another, and business continued as usual for that family and for the local rich who were part of the plot. But there were real fights between soldiers who came from England and soldiers from France. So for the people in France, it was as if there was a real fight going on. The English tried to take over our country, and there was a while that the king of England, I believe it was Henry VI, also became the king of France at the same time. So there was this big fight, but this fight was a ritual. The ones that died were the soldiers who fought, and the ones who were traumatized were the people both in England and in France that lost loved ones. And then after the 100 Years' War, which lasted 130 years, it was as if all that conflict never happened. So the descendants of the people that were harmed by that 130-year period of conflict began to ask questions, but they were treated as crazy people. What are you talking about, man? England is England. Eventually became Great Britain in, I believe, 1701. But anyway, England is England, or Great Britain is Great Britain, and we are France. What are you talking about, man? So the descendants of the victims were gaslighted. And such things happen throughout history. It can be, for example, that somewhere in the United States, I'm not sure which year it was, but there was this big massacre that occurred on blacks. Around 240, I believe, of them died. But this big lynching, which was really, they were gunned down by a mob, it was covered up. And if you mention it, historians will look at you and think, what? Because historians are not aware of it, because they weren't taught this in the university. But now you begin to show pictures from newspapers that survived from that time of what happened. And now people are pretending as if you're the one crazy. They say, well, those pictures is out of context. They begin to trick you in thinking that you're the one that's crazy. If though you point out this was a big massacre in the history of the United States, why aren't we talking about it? Gaslighting. Now look, it's understandable that people don't want to meditate on the past because nothing good comes from it. But people should process the past because it's only then that you can truly move forward. It's then that you break the patterns of violence so that the patterns of violence won't haunt you and your descendants and the community in the future. But a lot of folks just want to cut off manifestations, you want to fight the symptoms and to be relieved. And that's what they call moving on. Forgive and forget. You can't change the past. They mention facts, but those facts don't add up when you look at the bigger picture. Yes, you can't change the past, but you should process it. And someone stabbed you in the chest. You're still alive. You can't undo it, you've been stabbed. But your body has to process what happened so that you can function properly. You may have a scar, and maybe with surgery you can remove the scar, but you can't change that it happened. The body doesn't lie, because once you're out of the body, when you die, and there is someone that will perform an autopsy, they will see that there was a trauma once of a knife or of some sharp object. Okay, so you have to process the past in a Christ-centered manner. That's where victory is. But the world has an alternative, and that's the gaslighting. It's done collectively. And the issue with collective gaslighting is that eventually what has been covered up will resurface. For example, about the 100 Years' War, they couldn't hide it because it lasted for 130 years. So, of course, there's going to be evidence that this was a big conflict. But let's say there was a big, big massacre in South Korea after the Second World War, in which many Koreans were killed by the South Korean army, and they covered it up completely. But then, one day, someone conducts an historical research, a Korean history student, and he goes through the archives and he realizes, hold on a minute, in 1952, there were 4,000 people living in this village. A year later was another census of the province, and this village only counted 40 people. Huh? What happened to all those people? And then he goes through memory archives and sees there's a big gap over there. And is the gap going to be accounted for? Now, he is not aware of the collective violence that happened, but the evidence reveals that there is a gap somewhere that can't be accounted for. So whatever the world's gaslighting about, it will always resurface one way or the other. And often when it resurfaces, it will resurface in a manner that's quite unpleasant and very uncomfortable. So history does not repeat itself literally, but it does rhyme itself. That's why when you understand patterns and cycles, how the paranormal operates, you can also understand what's going on in the world out there. You can also understand what's going on with ethnic violence and ethnic conflicts. It's historical patterns of violence that are working out. And the only way to be free from those historical patterns is when you are delivered. And real deliverance happens when you become born again and when you are renewed in your mind. Without becoming born again, you're lost, you're unsaved, and all that's left for you is extended relief. And extended relief implies gaslighting. That same gaslighting that will backfire in the long run. It may not backfire directly on you, but it will backfire on your descendants. So that's what I want to share today about gaslighting. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.